once you suppress the truth of God, you become untethered from reality. You become unanchored. And the current just takes you further and further and further, not just away from God, but away from reality, away from logic. Vatican Library, which is within Vatican City, has opened a prayer room for Muslims.
Really? The London Mayor, Sadiq, who's a odious little poison dwarf, usually he's constantly talking about London's diversity, and what he means is the uncontrolled immigration into Britain and the complete erosion of our way of life. The allegation, this terrible allegation of racism which is thrown at everybody, is now people are going to have to think twice before they do it. So I am very grateful to God and to those that support me for that justice has now been done. And I need to work on being gracious about it rather than going, ha ha, which is what I feel inside.
Welcome to another episode of WTF, the worlds of Continent Fox. But today it's singular because we're in the same world. We're in the same city, the same place, the same country. We're of the same heart and soul, of the same mind.
We're not going to give you the address in case you send some people around to try and kill Larry again.
Yeah, somebody sends a drone strike, here. It's great to have Laurence Fox here with me in my home, and we're recording on this beautiful spring day in the American South, and I see, Laza, that you have brought me a present. What is this?
It's a very nice cap. It says unity. You know this lovely expression that deranged leftists say, which is diversity is our greatest strength, which if you swap for anything anti-Western or anti-white is what they mean. So they basically mean we hate the West. So I had the diversity crossed out and put the word unity on it. So it's a rather pretty little cap. And there you can get them at the culture stores. And if you order them, I will sign one for you as well. So that's how good it is. And Larry looks very handsome in it for a man who usually wears a fedora.
Actually, what I was wearing last night is a Panama.
Okay.
You need to know your hats. I do have fedoras, but see, fedoras are winter hats. They're beaver pelt.
Right.
And they're thicker, they're heavier. I was wearing a Panama last night.
He was wearing a Panama last night, and we had a Guinness in Alabama, and it was lovely. So
unity is our greatest strength. I love this.
It's better than the diversity. What do you think of when they say the London Mayor, Sadiq, who's a odious little poison dwarf, usually he's constantly talking about London's diversity, and what he means is the uncontrolled immigration into Britain and the complete erosion of our way of life. And actually they put an advert on the Tube with a picture of someone from the Windrush generation, which was a generation of Caribbean people who came to Britain in the 50s and were not treated very well. So we're sorry about that. It wasn't me. And they said, we're not just it says something along the lines of, we're not just part of Britain's story. We wrote Britain's story. And it's like, well, hang on. Britain's been around for a few thousand years and, you are part of the story, but you didn't write it. So Sadiq Khan's anti-white, anti-Western rhetoric continues. So that's why the cap exists.
Well, and I just got a text stating that the Vatican has opened, the Vatican Library, which is within Vatican City, has opened a prayer room for Muslims.
Really?
A prayer room for Muslims. So I was trying to picture, Pope Urban II in 1095, he declared, "It is the will of God," and launched the first crusade. It was the will of God. I won't apologize for the crusades, by the way. It's launched the first crusade. It was the will of God to reclaim the holy city and to keep Muslims out of Europe. That's Pope Urban II. Pope Leo XIV said, let's just let them have Vatican City.
Well, I'm looking forward to Pope Muhammad I.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. We've got a new Pope. He's called Muhammad I. He's, there are a couple of drawbacks.
That's good. I might steal that and tweet it before you have a chance to.
He's not a Catholic, but we're an inclusive organisation here at the church. It's everywhere, isn't it? This idea that you can take completely contrasting ideologies and somehow squash them together and everyone's fine.
Well, let's talk about some good news that you have on this Friday afternoon.
Yes. Right. I have to frame this story a little bit for you. During the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, the supermarket in England, our version of Walmart, Sainsbury's, tweeted that they were going to provide safe spaces for their black employees.
And so what are we talking about, like 2017?
2020.
Okay, 2020.
2020, straight after George Floyd died of a drug overdose, they tweeted, we're going to provide some safe spaces for our black employees. To which I responded, why are they in danger? And perhaps you should give them water fountains as well, and was making the point that it was proto-segregationism, which it was. Black Lives Matter has since been shown to be an enormous grift, so that people can buy large mansions in the Topanga Canyon and other places. Anyway, I tweeted this. I said it's proto-segregationist. I thought we'd moved past this stuff with all of the work which happened a lot of it in Alabama, actually, didn't it? As you drive down Martin Luther King Freeway or Highway or whatever it is, past Mobile and all of those other places. So to this point about saying we need to stop obsessing about skin colour because, as Martin Luther King quite rightly pointed out, it's the content of one's character that one should focus on rather than the colour of their skin. I was called by some famous people, one of them in charge of the satanic death cult in Britain called Stonewall. Actually, I'll probably get sued for saying that. In my honest opinion, which I'm allowed, it's a satanic death cult which promotes the mutilation of children. Stonewall, I was called a racist for taking what would be called by woke people an anti-racist stance or a non-racist stance, and I responded rhetorically to an actress who tweeted at me. Anyone, bearing in mind I was an actor at the time, and I hope to be again one day, especially after today. She wrote, anyone who gives Laurence Fox employment does so in the knowledge that he's unequivocally, unashamedly...
Well, let's name her. What's her...
She's called Nicola Thorpe. Hi, Nicola. She'll be too busy watching MSNBC. She tweeted, anyone who hires Laurence Fox, bearing in mind that I was a successful actor...
I'm going to look her up.
Does so in the knowledge that he's unequivocally, unashamedly and unapologetically a racist. So I responded with, anyone who hires Nicola Thorpe does so in the knowledge that she's unashamedly, unequivocally and unapologetically a paedophile. Now, some people can say that this is it was possibly a thuggish response, but my point was to say that one baseless allegation mutes another. Anyway, I was sued for defamation for calling them paedophiles, to which I countersued.
I don't think I've ever seen her before.
No, she was in a TV show called Coronation Street. She can't act. And doesn't anymore, not because someone tried to end her career. She did that through her own lack of talent. Must be more gracious. But I was then sued by these people, and I countersued for calling me a racist. The media, doing what the media does, didn't report at all that I was called a racist, just reported the fact that I'd called them, and didn't even report that it was a rhetorical device, which I pointed out that it was. That they were paedophiles, and which I obviously didn't mean, and I also explained that I didn't mean it. Anyway, long libel trial, judgment comes down, they've suffered serious harm, I defamed them. No mention of them calling me a racist at all. So we appealed this decision, which I thought was wrong, and this morning I woke up to an email from my lawyers, and we won the appeal. So a lot of money is going to have to be returned. And the allegation, this terrible allegation of racism, which is thrown at everybody, is now people are going to have to think twice before they do it. So I am very grateful to God and to those that support me for that justice has now been done. And I need to work on being gracious about it rather than going, ha ha, which is what I feel inside. So I'm going more for graciousness, which is the right way to do it. And I am genuinely grateful that justice has been done, to the point where I was tearful, because it's my battle with this stuff, especially as an artist over the meaning of words, is that if you use words If words lose all meaning, then people stop using words and they start using other methods to get their point across, which is we see all the time nowadays. So that's the long and short of it. I feel like I'm going on, and it's now shouldn't be called WTF. It should be just be called WF. But seeing it is as it is called WTF, we must actually, you must be part of it.
Well, I'm happy to give you the floor and tell your story, because it's a terrible story that has I won't say an ending yet, a happy ending yet, but it's nearing that. There's still more to be done, but no, I'm happy for you to tell that story, because this has been very, very hard on you. And I guess I would want to convey to the audience that knowing Laurence as I do, the loss of your occupation wasn't merely the loss of work and the loss of income, which of course is substantial in both counts, but it's something that you love to do. And I have hurt for you the fact that something that you love to do, you've not been able to do. And because of this very thing, because of a false accusation, the fact that it's taken, 5 years to get to this point, is itself a travesty. But hopefully in the end, justice is done here.
I think it.
And I look forward to seeing you in, future, Gosford Parks or whatever.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Also, it was other than the fact that I love art, because I think the whole point of art is to push against developing orthodoxies, like how woke Larry and I are, but the whole of the world shifts itself into this direction of wokedom, where up is down, and the Alice in Wonderland madness of things like Quiz for Palestine and all of this stuff, which none of it can hold together, none of it makes any sense. The role of art, as Hamlet says, is to hold a mirror up to nature. And that's what I felt I was doing, which I was resisting a prevailing orthodoxy, which was wrong, in my view, rationally and logically. But then the second punishment, other than what I thought was attacking me for making a very logical assessment that we shouldn't start obsessing about skin color again, because look where that led to last time, was the point that I was trained at the best drama school in Britain. RADA. I had 22 years of experience in front of a camera, so I knew what I was doing. I was good at it, and there was the bonus of being well remunerated for that. But to have that shut off as a creative person is extremely hurtful, very, very difficult to deal with. And there have been incredibly bleak times in that 5-year period, and I'm very grateful to have got through them. And it is nice to see now that I think the wind is changing. I really do. I think we've dealt a mortal blow to the death cultists on the child mutilation. That's been dealt a mortal blow, and I think woke is dying. I think it's not dying easily. They've now moved on from racist to far-right extremist. But I saw in the British Parliament this MP spitting out these words, these racist hate preachers, and you're like, these people who you call racist hate preachers, while you're the be kind people who are so kind that you shut up the racist hate preachers by shooting them in front of their children. It's that's what I find despicable about and illogical and deeply despicable, is that the very thing that they talk about, it's Goebbels, isn't it? Accused the other of the thing that you were doing. But these people feel like they have a moral supremacy over everybody else, but actually they're willing to commit the most depraved acts in the name of so-called kindness, fairness, and inclusion. You know what I mean?
I do, because they believe that ends justify means, and what we're seeing from some who are on the so-called right, who are not really on the right, is that they're willing to do similar kinds of things. I'm talking about like a Candace Owens and so forth. By this, I don't mean that she's out there, assassinating people, but I mean rather that she's willing to spread any kind of rumor or create mythologies if it achieves a particular end, that she wants. And I keep saying to people, your means define your end. They define your end. This idea of almost every revolution believes, and I'm sure many of these people in organizations like VLM and Antifa and so forth who are rioting are saying to themselves, this is okay to achieve our end. And once we get there, then we'll do away with this kind of stuff. But it never plays out that way. And that's because your means define your end. And every revolution said, we'll put away the violence. We'll put away the genocide. We have to eliminate our enemies. We have to acquire power. And once we're there, then it will be liberty and justice for all, equality, fraternity, and so on. But it never plays out like that. I'm in a complete agreement that we're talking about individuals who are lying and know they're lying when they are using verbiage like far-right extremist, and when they're using words like fascist and Nazi and so on. They know that what they're saying isn't true, but it's because they have no scruples. It's because they're willing to do absolutely anything. The people accused you of being a racist, they had to know that it was a lie. But because they hate you, they're willing to do anything to destroy you. And I've experienced that, of course, in my own life and career just this year. Some really terrible things that we've had to deal with from people who wouldn't mind if my wife got killed, if I had guests here in the house, my mother, whoever, doesn't matter. They're willing to cause bloodshed. They're willing to do anything to anybody to achieve their end. And the end goal, of course, is power. It's about the acquisition of power at all cost. And they have to be defeated. People like this have to be confronted and defeated. And where I'd like to see that happen is in the realm of ideas. But, you're increasingly dealing with individuals who they do not want to engage you in discussion. They don't want to engage you in debate. I have offered to debate Daryl Cooper, the pseudo-historian who Tucker Carlson has platformed twice, a guy who self-describes as a fascist. And I don't know if I'd call him a Holocaust denier, but I certainly would call him a Holocaust revisionist. Here's a guy who's pushing, an anti-Semitic narrative, who's pushing lies on, one of the largest podcast platforms in the world. And the Steve Day Show reached out to me and said, would you debate him on our show? I said, with relish, I would love to. I mean, if we narrow the discussion, what's about, it can't be just about World War II, period. It's got to be about certain assertions the guy's made on his show. And of course, he declined. And I recently made the same offer to NBC. They reached out and said, would you be willing to come on and discuss the legacy of Charlie Kirk? And again, I said, yes. They said, who would you like to take the opposite side? I said, Russell Moore, who you might not be familiar with, but he's a fake Christian. He's a fake Christian. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's been I think the editor-in-chief of Christianity Today for some years, and we've just discovered that, of course, they were receiving USAID monies,
right,
propping them up. And they were, of course, pushing everyone. They're pushing a never Trump, agenda and this kind of thing. And I'd met Moore some years ago because the two of us spoke together at a conference. It was just the two of us. And where he's gone since then, I believe that conference was in 2007. And where he's gone from there to where he is now is incredible. But again, he turned it down. And it's because these are people, they don't want to do that. They don't want to be in these discussions. And I think it's because they know that they can't defend their position.
Because their position is just about, as you said, the position is the pursuit of power. And therefore that's disgusting. And I mean, how can you defend that anyway? It's the means justify the ends until the ends are met, and then the means.
Well, the stuff that they're pushing, on Charlie Kirk. The agenda that they're trying to push there, the things that Candace Owens is claiming that she had these private conversations, or he appeared to her in a dream, whatever it is, these strange things that claims that she's making.
But I can,
as it relates to him,
just to push a little bit back on that, not
push as hard as you want,
because if you live in our world and you've had on that very porch over there some guys with AR-15s ready to come in and swat you, you must have had feelings, I've certainly have, of being fearful for your life for what you believe. So I can imagine that Charlie Kirk might have thought, you might have had some sort of sense that something dreadful was going to happen. Whether I think it's completely wrong of Candace Owens to try and exploit that post his death, but yeah. I can imagine that one does get a premonition of sometimes that something dreadful will happen, especially if you hold terrible, evil views like men can't become women.
But Howard, I agree with everything you just said, so I don't understand how you're pushing back. What do you mean?
Well, that Candace Owens said that Charlie Kirk had confided in her that he felt that he was going to die.
Yeah. And
I can understand that Charlie Kirk might have felt that.
But I don't believe I don't believe her. I think she's lying.
Right.
I don't think that's true. But anyway, but let's just say you did. Okay. The thing about Charlie's death that people need to understand, and I actually tweeted a thread about this, this is one of the more startling aspects that should wake people up, and I think, by the way, this is what has awakened so many people, and is part of the reaction, the strong reaction to Charlie's murder, is that if Charlie had, say, been on a speaking tour in Nigeria, in the Sudan, and was killed, we would mourn his death. But I think the reaction would have been very different. I think the reaction would have been, Charlie knew that he was going to a place that was very dangerous. He was prepared for that. He knew that he might lose his life. And Erica, his wife, also knew that and was prepared for that. And we mourn his loss as a Christian martyr. The horrifying thing, the jarring thing for most people related to Charlie, I think, is that Charlie wasn't doing what most of us thought of as the dangerous stuff. He was speaking on a hard left wing. He wasn't at UC Berkeley. He was in a red state. He was in a state that isn't noted for this type of crime, and he's shot in the throat while he's sitting up on stage talking with a bunch of students. That's the jarring and horrifying thing, is that the way it happened, what he was doing, where he was, not in New York City. He wasn't in Portland. He was in a red state.
But he was in a university. He was at a university, and universities are in themselves
incubators of radicals.
Yeah, and I find that it's so upsetting that I can understand that universities are places where you test ideas and radical ideas.
Sure.
I think, why not? But the thing is, none of these universities are testing radical ideas. They're pushing one radical agenda, and they're doing it, the cowardice of it, putting aside the dreadful malice and cowardice and satanic evil of what happened to Charlie, is that these people are doing this safely behind walls of that,
from the ivy. They're in their ivory tower.
Yeah, it's giving it, and you're seeing that great universities like Oxford and Cambridge, where people have put, they're famous. There are TV shows in England. I was in one about these great university towns, and then you watch British. I think Oxford and Cambridge have both now fallen out of the top 3 or top 5 in a year or two, and you're going, I wonder why that is. Charlie Kirk stood opposite a guy who is he's standing for re-election, head of the Oxford Union, where I've been asked to speak several times and always refused because I know exactly what they were like. He stood opposite this guy. He debated him in good faith. He reached his hand out. He was unarmed. And that guy celebrated his death. And you're like, how the spiritual problem, and I still can't get my head around it, is how do you deal with people like that? You've met, you've spoken to, they've seen the look in your eye, they've seen that you don't mean harm, and you will laugh and rejoice in the massacre of a father in front of his 2 young children. I don't know where to begin in dealing with those people, other than you get the same sort of feelings as they get, which is like, we just need to not eradicate, but we just need to remove them all from the conversation, and that doesn't seem to be a solution either.
Let me ask you a question. We haven't discussed this, off camera. I've never asked you this question before, but I'm curious your take. I have my own theory, but I want to hear yours. What do you suppose is the link between transgenderism and this kind of violence? I mean, we had the this isn't the first instance of this. We had the Nashville Christian school shooting. Again, Christian. Charlie was a Christian, targeting Christians. We've had other shootings of this sort. What's that?
The Catholic school.
The Catholic school. What is the connection between transgenderism and this kind of violence, as opposed to, say, lesbianism or just homosexuality?
Well, I think it's a deep hatred of God and life. So the whole idea of transgenderism anyway is to pervert nature in a way that you can't pervert it. You can have your own thoughts on homosexuality and all of that stuff. As I'm often called, a wet liberal when it comes to my views on homosexuality, which I am. But the transgender thing it doesn't exist. So what you're doing is you're deliberately, maliciously corrupting your own creation, and therefore you're by exclusion you're worshipping the devil. That's what it is. It's devil worship, isn't it? Transgenderism. It needs to be completely. We're going to look back on the. It's also, I think, an excuse as well for angry, empty, sad and as in many cases psychotic people. It's an excuse to place all of their anger into, because the natural part of society is to be compassionate towards people with mental diseases, but society used to have to be able to differentiate between someone with a mental disorder who needed help and support. You've made this clear distinction when you tweeted the other day. There are people that you'd have to bring to God with it, and say it doesn't matter where you are now, it's where was it you that said you don't brush your teeth twice? Was that your line? Yeah. And well, you have to just make a differentiation, which society did. We used to have lunatic asylums, we used to have mental hospitals, we used to lock these people up. We didn't used to applaud them and then leave them to do their dirty work. So I suppose, in short, they are devil worshippers. That's what I think. They hate life so much. They hate their own creation. They hate their own creation that they would defile their body. They would, they would remove any chance of reproducing. It's also so unreal. Do
you think they're self-hating?
Yeah, I think most people are self-hating a lot of the time. I think it's quite hard not to. If you've got a brain, it's quite hard not to look at your own fallenness and not go, well, actually not self-hating, but, self-critical. I do think I don't think they're self-hating, actually. I don't think they hate themselves. I think they hate everybody else. That's the problem.
Well, I ask about the self-hatred because it involves self-mutilation. The things that they're doing, involve self-mutilation, but the connection to me, and this is where you're saying you disagree with me, but to me, the progression is a Romans 1 progression. And Romans 1 says that once you suppress, I'm summarizing, but once you suppress the truth of God, that there is a God, and you actually said this yesterday in your own words, which I thought was interesting. In fact, you said it at least twice, but we'll come to that in a moment. But that once you suppress the truth of God, you become untethered from reality. And there's this you become unanchored, and the current just takes you further and further and further, not just away from God, but away from reality, away from logic. And you begin entertaining ideas that are utterly nonsensical, so that you arrive at a place where you know what? We were meant to walk on our hands. We were meant to walk on our hands. We should all be walking around on your hands. And you find yourself in a world where people are walking around on their hands, and you're going, can you not see that this is a little weird? This is strange. And then you're being called a bigot, And I mean, that's what's happened when we're talking about men in women's sports, men in women's bathrooms, women, penetrating, maybe not the right word, men's spaces and things of that nature.
Doesn't seem to happen the other way around, does it? Strange that.
It doesn't happen quite. Well, see, I actually think that it did, and this is the payment for that. Meaning that the women's liberation movement moved increasingly towards the annihilation of the distinction of the sexes.
Yeah.
And I mean, invading men's spaces, so that you have all those wonderful, clubs. I've been in a few of them. You have two, I'm sure, in and around Trafalgar Square, and women arguing that, men shouldn't be able to have, women should be allowed into those spaces. They should be there. Women should be allowed to be in men's sports. So we began seeing women, not playing quarterback or linebacker, but, place kickers and being celebrated, and these kinds of things, going into the military and the changing of the standards for special forces so that women could have those spaces. You talking about, on your flight over here, how who's the airline? British Airways. Have celebrated that the pilot of the plane was a woman, not by virtue of her skill, but by virtue of the fact that they had certain quotas for these oppressed minorities. And I think that the backlash of that was that men of a warped mindset said, you know what, we're going to play that game, and now we're going to start pushing into women's spaces. We're going to take over your sports. And what it leads to, because this is the first time this has happened, the Greeks did this, and it almost led to the extermination of women altogether. See, I think that gay men want the annihilation of women.
Yeah, you've said this.
I don't mean every gay man, but I think that generally speaking, women, because of the Will and Grace, I don't know if you had that show there.
Yeah.
But it was very big here, and that show did a lot to advance the gay agenda in this country, because it presented this picture of such a likable, platonic couple of this woman and her best friend who is gay. They don't have sex, but hey, I mean, women and gay men, they're best of friends. And I will say to women all the time, they're not your friends. They're your competitors. They want to be in your spaces because they want your men. They want access to your men. They're like the pedophile scout leader who wants access to children. That's the only reason he's a scout leader. Well, the only reason he's chosen to be a priest or a preschool teacher is because he wants. That's what they want. They want access to your men, and they're befriending you to get that access.
Yeah.
So I think all of this actually is quite logical, and it knits together, and you get moving further and further and further downstream. So it starts with, the rejection of the opposite sex. As Paul says, men in Romans 1, men ceased having relations with women, and women ceased having relations with men. And then it just keeps going and going. And before long, you have people saying, well, I am a woman. And one of the things that fascinates me about transgenderism, and by the way, about homosexuality in general, is that they still find a way to create a male and a female.
Yeah.
Which is so weird. So you have a woman, I started to do a show on this, and I lost my nerve.
Right.
Actual demonstrating. I don't mean like demonstrating, but you have women who are wearing strap-on penises so that they can penetrate their female partner. And you're going, forgive me, I don't want to be too gross with this, but It's important that you think on it, that you realize the perversity is such that they go, they still have this desire for this thing
To create the binary.
so to create the binary.
Yeah.
So they create prosthetic penises in order to achieve it. When you're going, it's actually quite interesting. Maybe you don't know this, but God has actually created people that are called men, and they actually have real ones.
Yeah.
And then you have what is his name?
So made it really
What's
nice.
his name with the fake breasts?
Oh, there's a lot of them now.
But I mean, it's utter insanity. Like, God created women who actually have real breasts, who can actually provide milk to a child. So it's fascinating to me that within homosexuality and then within transgenderism is they still seek to create, as you put it, the binary. So they create the fake stuff. And it's because God has implanted in them a desire, a good desire, for the real thing within a certain context. But they reject that and they create an entirely fictitious sci-fi world.
Yeah, because there are people who are actually going, you know what, I don't even want to be a woman either. So there are people that are kind of sewing and they're chopping off their bits and they don't want any.
While somebody else of the opposite sex is adding them.
Yeah, do you not think it is sticking two fingers up to God and just saying, I loathe my creation?
Oh, absolutely. That's why it's an assault on the image of God.
I hate you. And I've seen that. You see it in lots of behaviors with people. People that are, everyone will have had a great cruelty done to them. And you were saying before we started about, that people know that they are wrong in what they're doing. But there's a desire in people to do that rejoices in cruelty, which I find astonishing. And, it's like if we got, and then there's a desire of people, they used to, the further you go from the moral order, and as you say, the moral order is very simple and it starts at it starts at God, but then it, in human form, it starts in the simple binary of men and women. It's right there at the very beginning of Genesis. So the minute people try and corrupt that, you're thinning of the wedging it. It can then come out into a panoply of alternate disasters, which is why the Bible tries to keep you on track, doesn't it? All the time. It tries to tell you, it talks about drunkenness. It talks about the way, how poisonous your tongue can be. It's constantly trying to bring you back to, the repercussions.
Keep you anchored in truth.
Yeah, the repercussions of this. So it's not just transgenderism. It's the open cruelty. And then the thing that I find really upsetting about it is the appeasement or the apologism for appalling behaviour. So we have the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer acknowledging the Palestinian state, and then Trump, this terrible demonic creature that the Democrats like to call, to make Trump create a ceasefire in Palestine. And what's the next thing we see? Just person after person after person being dragged out into the street and massacred. And you're going this, and we're all meant to, again, if we don't stand on our hands and say and applaud with our feet the massacring of people, we're in some way bigoted or anti-fairness or we're Zionists or something like that. And it's like, no, I don't ignore the evidence in my eyes and ears. You don't turn up, start a fight by massacring a bunch of innocent people who, by the way, were all lefties and on your side in the first place.
Yeah.
Massacre all of those people and then cry about it when someone comes and brings the wrath of revenge or, retaliation or retribution to you.
Well, you had said last night a couple of times that you felt like, in speaking of your own faith, that, and I'm paraphrasing, but simply adhering to the fact of God's existence, of Jesus Christ's work upon the cross, and what that means for you, if that was all it is that you believed and knew, that's so important to keeping you
Stop you becoming evil.
Stop you becoming
That's
evil.
literally what
To keep you in within reality.
Yeah.
And that anybody who rejects that, and I'm almost quoting you here, they're entering in some degree into an alternate universe. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, but my favorite part of it is you're being asked to believe something which seems unreal, which is the resurrection. So the crucifixion on its own is mind-blowing. That someone put aside that let's call Jesus for a second as a thought exercise, a paranoid schizophrenic who hears voices and thinks that he's Jesus. So he's instructed by God to go and die for everyone's sins. And he suffers horrendously for everyone's sins. That in itself is an incredible sacrifice to make. But then you're being asked to believe that having done that, there is a resurrection and that he was resurrected for it. So it's the bit that people can never get their head around is that you're being asked to believe something which you haven't really witnessed ever. Very few people have witnessed that sort of thing. And you're being asked to base your entire way of looking at the world on it. And I love it. And I as I said to you, I think anyone who rejects that is in real trouble, incredible trouble. Because if you don't believe it, you'll believe anything else. You know, that's what there's quotes
G.K. Chesterton.
Yeah.
It's not that if you don't believe in God, you don't believe in anything. It's that you'll believe in, I forget how he puts it. Yeah, you'll believe in everything, or
you'll believe
something
in
to that
everything.
effect. There's just
a man who doesn't believe in something will believe in it.
Man is going to worship something, and if it's either God or it will be himself, or maybe the devil, maybe some kind of ism, maybe a vice, but he's going to worship something, and that's really what that's all about. But I thought that was a good statement that you made last night as we were sitting out here, chatting.
It's important. It's important to talk about those things. It's also important you're doing a talk about how to raise young people as well. And I'm always drawn back to this idea that my doctor said to me, as my son was really feverish and I took him, I was worried about him. So I took him to the doctor and she, gave him what he needed and he got better. But he was sort of sat there, and even though he was ill, he was able to sort of play on his own device thing, his phone or his iPad or whatever it was. But just before I left, my doctor said, you shouldn't let your child play on a phone. And I said, why? Expecting some, long, boring reason about what's evil on the internet or something. And she said, children should not have power over anything. And they have power if you put a phone in their hand, they have total control and power over it. And she said it is so bad for their brains as they develop and grow up and become adults. And I think we don't underestimate the power of these phones. But if you're living in the modern world, which doesn't really have any anchors left in it, because anchors are far-right extremist things, and the anchors are for racists and Christians, which is what the left really want to kill and destroy. You're left in, as you've said, and as we all say, it's a world that you can't really operate in, because you end up with Queers for Palestine, and you end up with people siding with the very people that would throw them off a building. And he was like, talk me through that logically. And it then becomes about what it's really about, which is power, isn't it? They want power over you. So they
the so-called Red-Green Alliance, I think it's about their hatred for Christianity, which ultimately brings us back to where we just were, their hatred for God, the real God. And so they're willing to ally themselves, even if it costs them.
What would you say to Pope Leo, though? So Pope Leo's voice is probably, what would Pope Leo be thinking? He might be thinking, I can't say what he is thinking, but maybe he's got this modern, or seemingly modern, but it might be as old as the hills, notion that there is only one God. And our friends, the Muslims, are praying to the same God. It's just in different forms.
I don't know enough about him.
Yeah.
But it has the appearance, at least from the outside. Yeah, it has the appearance from the outside of being tolerance at the expense of everything that you believe.
Tolerance at the expense of reason is not a good thing.
And it's absolutely incredible to me that the papacy would do that. But I will also say this: I spend a lot of time in Rome every year. I'm there for long stretches at a time, and I have made a point of putting myself in the way of priests because I like picking their brain. I mean, I'm not just Protestant; I'm thoroughly Protestant. You know, I'm essentially a Calvinist, which makes me not just not Catholic, but almost anti-Catholic. And I say that having spoken, I've have many Catholic fans. I have a rosary that's hanging over my desk. It was one that was sent to me by a little group of nuns. I'm so grateful for it. It's I don't pray the rosary, don't even know how to pray the rosary, but I'm so grateful for it because there are aspects of Catholicism with which I was raised and introduced, for which I have a great deal of respect. Some of the most profoundly influential thinkers on my life, an individual like Etienne Gilson, for instance, Malcolm Muggeridge, who from your country, who late in life converted to Catholicism, Evelyn Waugh, some others. But I'm sola scriptura. I don't believe I have to go through a priest in order to communicate with God. I'd love to go. By the way, Calvin, if you're watching it, we should have a private, friendly debate on these things because I'd like to demolish you on a number of things. I say that in a friendly way.
Private and friendly demolishment.
You're a very friendly one. I say that as somebody who likes Calvin, quite a lot and consider him a friend. And I know he's a very dear friend of yours. But what I find in Vatican City frequently these days is not that kind of Catholicism. The real Catholics, the ones who really believe it, those I can admire. What I find frequently in Vatican City, and I don't mean to suggest that they all fall into this category, but many of the higher ups give you very much the impression that they are very much on the left. And Jesuits, who used to be, at the forefront of they were created with the intention of being the foot soldiers, the theological foot soldiers, and in some cases just literal soldiers of the Reformation, are now, it's a hotbed of atheism. It's a hotbed of radical leftism. And it's pretty astonishing kind of stuff. So when you see this, you see this news that they're opening a prayer room for Muslims in Vatican City. I just think, well, it's just kind of more of the same of what's happening at the.
It's the same as an airport, isn't it? It's like if you go into the airport in Britain, or you go into a hospital, or you go anywhere, and it is multi-faith prayer room, always.
Yes, all over the place. And there are no Muslims in it.
Yeah, but there's never a picture of a cross outside.
Nope.
It's always a picture of a man prostrate down like that. So you're like,
that's the multi-faith.
That's the multi-faith. It's kind of, you've got to hand it to the Muslims, the five a day prayer thing, because it's like you never have a break. So I need a room. It's like, you've got to include me because I have to pray 5 times a day.
Have you seen the video today of a group of Muslims praying on the lawn at Westminster Abbey?
Yeah. I've seen,
turning towards Mecca.
There's many.
Right there at the holiest of all sites in Britain, Westminster Abbey, where they are. Westminster Abbey has been there for more than 1,000 years. Edward the Confessor started the construction of Westminster Abbey, and here we are, just handing it all over. But we're a long way with Leo XII. We are a long way from another Catholic for whom I have just immense respect and a real hero, Pope John Paul II.
Yeah, Pope
John Paul II was one of the greatest individuals, champions of freedom of the 20th century, along with Churchill, along with Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher. There are others who
anyone who's basically being shot.
Yeah. Well, yes, yes, exactly. And there'd be a lot theologically I wouldn't agree with John Paul II, but John Paul II will be in heaven. Mm-hmm. He will be in heaven, and I look forward to meeting. I'm going to get in his book signing line, and I'm going to wait, to get all the way to the front just to greet.
You've got eternity, so it's like,
I got
how
plenty
long
of
is
time.
the line? They're thinking 50 to 60 years.
I am definitely have him on a list of people I want to meet.
Check in with. Who else would be on your list of people to check in with in heaven?
Well, I have to think about that. Assuming he's there, I would very much like to meet individuals like Michelangelo, Da Vinci. They interest me a great deal. Constantine is a historical figure I'd like to meet. Ronald Reagan. I was very privileged to my high school, my college years. Reagan was president, and it was an awesome feeling because I'm old enough to remember the Carter years, which were just dreadful. I was in elementary, middle school, when he was president, how dreadful that was, and the feeling that Reagan did make America great again. Before we go to that, who would be on your list of people you want to meet, Madam? Your mom.
I'd like to. I'd definitely pop.
I want to see my dad.
Mum and Ritva. Your dad, I'd like to meet. I'd love to meet Lizzie's dad. I would like to meet. I'd like to talk to C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Quite a lot.
Add him to my list, Jonathan.
It's a long list, but fortunately, there's a long time, so it would be okay. It's difficult, isn't it? It's like being asked what you want for Christmas. You forget. But yeah, C.S. Lewis comes to mind because I want to ask him a few questions about that book he wrote, the Grief Observed book, which obsesses me.
Does it?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because he makes this point in it where he says, he's basically says, I'm really angry that he met her, his wife. He's like, if I hadn't met you, I wouldn't feel this way.
Yeah.
And I find that incredible as an idea, that grief is so powerful in that way. I love that book because I was going through grief at the time I read it.
Have you ever read The Problem of Pain?
No, I don't. I haven't read The Problem. Maybe I have. I don't know.
It'll disappoint you.
Which one have I got? The joy. The question.
Surprised by Joy.
Surprised by Joy is the one I'm going through at the moment.
Surprised by Joy has aspects of grief in it for sure. If you've read A Grief Observed, when you go and read The Problem of Pain, you're going to say this is shallow.
Really?
And I think it's because Lewis wrote that book like it's a defense of God, and it's a defense of the fact that he allows pain. But in that book, which was written much earlier, it's like he's wearing a lab coat and he has a clipboard and he's observing someone in pain and taking notes and offering theological answers, neat answers for why that is so. And in A Grief Observed, it's opposite.
Yeah.
He's the guy who's in crisis. He's the guy who's in pain. And it's a completely different book.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then maybe I scored on Grief Observed easier. I will. You're not highly recommending A Problem of Pain to me. So
well, somebody else might disagree with what I'm saying. It's worth looking at because it'll give you insight to Lewis. And I think Lewis himself would probably say that because it's a difference between a scene that I've always thought was very funny in the Bill Paxton, Sigourney Weaver, that movie Aliens, where she's trying to describe the aliens, those things with the mouth inside the mouth that comes out. And Bill Paxton plays this kind of gung-ho sort of space marine. And he's like, yeah, whatever, we'll get down there, we'll kill them all. And then they land on the planet and they encounter them. And he barely makes it back inside the spaceship. And he's like, let's just nuke them from space. It suddenly, and to me, that's what those books are. Is one of them is, someone is telling you of the reality. You're going, yeah, right. Yeah, right. An actual real life example of this that's funny is if you ever read Lewis and Clark's journals. They encounter the Sioux, and the Sioux are trying to tell them about a bear that they've never seen. So even if they've used the the right language, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Lewis and Clark were thinking they're describing black bears and brown bears, and they were describing grizzly bears, which Lewis and Clark had never seen. And they thought to themselves, they're using bows and arrows. And they're just kind of like, okay, sure. They're real tough, real tough. And the first time they encounter one, as I recall, I haven't read those journals in about 20 years, but the first time they encountered one is what is now Yellowstone National Park. And they see it at a distance, and there's 17 of them, and they open fire with their muzzle loaders.
Wow.
So it's not a quick reload.
Yeah.
And the bear, rather than scampering off into the woods, charged them, which they weren't experienced before. And they shot it 8 times, and it fell on a sandbar in a river just yards from them. And they were like, And on the way back through Yellowstone National Park later, they see one, down below, and they look at each other and go, nah.
So for us English, for the English side of this thing, what is I know that there's Kodiak bears are giant things. What? So you get brown bear, black bear.
New guy hunted those on Kodiak Island.
You'll get a brown bear, a black bear.
We have, even here in the South, we have black bear and brown bear. You never see them. They're so rare anymore. They hardly exist. I have seen them when hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Right.
I've encountered bears twice, but they weren't like grizzlies. And one of them was slightly frightening. It was I believe, a black bear with 2 young cubs. And I thought, okay, this could get dicey. But we just stayed very still. And she came across our trail at, I don't know, maybe 30 yards, 50 yards, I'm not sure. And the friend I was with, he said, what do we do if she charges us? And I said, we run. And he said, but we can't outrun her. And I said, I don't have to outrun her. I just have to outrun you.
Why are you putting on your trainers? That's fine. Don't worry. It's okay.
But that instance, and then later, another one, and not to say they can't kill you, but I don't think, I'm just going off the top of my head here, but I don't think there's been a fatal bear attack for more than a century from a black bear, brown bear. It's the grizzlies.
Where do the grizzlies? So the grizzlies live in the colder climes.
Colder climates, you'd have grizzlies, west Montana.
Are they bigger?
Oh, yes. Considerably bigger. Much, much, much larger. And then, of course, polar bears are even bigger than that.
And is the polar bear story true that polar bears, you can't tame a polar bear? Even if you take a cub, you can never tame it?
I don't know. I've never.
They always, you've never tried?
I've never tried.
Well, that's been a great conversation.
I don't know. My one of my uncles was in the Royal Navy, and he was stationed in the Arctic Circle, and this is like in the 1950s and 60s, and he had great polar bear stories. I just loved his polar bear stories, but they were terrifying stories of polar bears, just absolutely terrifying stories. That they would, that you didn't leave any garbage of any kind around because it would attract them.
Yeah.
And they're predatorial, and they will, if they see you, they come to your cabin or your hut or whatever it is that you're in, and they'll besiege it, in an effort to get in. And the stories he would tell were just absolutely terrifying.
We've gone off on a non sequitur.
We have, but why not?
Yeah,
it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting, but yeah, the reality to me. Now I'll bring it back. To me, it's like the reality of Islam versus the West's notion of what Islam is. I came back from Nigeria a bit like those
Nuke from space.
Go on, nuke from space.
I went on a lovely trip to Nigeria, and I came back going, let's nuke him from space.
But I did find myself speaking with, to these, wine and cheese kind of groups about, being in Nigeria. And it was like the things I was relating to them was I was saying, like, look, they have this mouth that goes, and they're going, yeah, right.
I always think our kids are going to turn around because there was a video I saw the other day of this guy, and he's standing there and he's staring at the camera, and he's a Muslim guy, and he's really calm, which is the terrifying part of it. And he's going, the Muslims that say Islam is a religion of peace, they're lying to you.
Yeah, of course they are.
And he says, It's not a religion of peace.
No, it's a strategy.
We are going to conquer every single square foot of this entire planet, and there is nothing you can do about it. And I thought, I saw this video and I tweeted, I said, I wonder if our children are going to come up to us in a few years' time and say, why didn't you just believe them? You know, before they head off to the front line in London to try and take back a corner of, you know, a few streets in London from our invading hordes that we invited in out of a sense of cultural enrichment. It's insane.
It is insane, and the left is aiding and abetting them in doing it.
So it's being used, the left, is it not?
Yeah, the left is definitely being used. It's because the left is arrogant enough to believe that when Christians are out of the way, when their conservative opposition are out of the way, they will be able to subdue the Muslims. And I think they're 100% wrong.
Well, especially seeing as they've all transgendered themselves, so they can't have any kids.
Well, I'm just waiting for you. You see these, you see these, footage of these Muslim marches and gatherings where it looks like millions of them are in the streets.
There are millions
of
London. I've been to them.
London and various other major European capitals, and you're wondering, when is the time going to come when they say, just go take Westminster.
Yeah.
Just go take 10 Downing Street. You wouldn't be able to stop them.
No, well, fortunately, when we did...
I mean, you could overthrow the government literally tomorrow.
But we could... Our Unite the Kingdom rally, we could have done the same. I did go backstage to the guys and say, by the way, there are that many people out there, we could...
He's not advocating that.
I'm not advocating...
Just want to be clear, don't sue him.
Sorry, well, no, it's prison they want me now. They want me in prison now. Now that they can't get me civilly, they want me criminally. That's another story for another day. Anyway, I want to go and shoot some guns now.
We're going to go shoot some machine guns.
Can I just finally say, it should be mandatory for all British people to come and spend a week in Alabama. Because what you realise is, from everything, from the tyre shop to the supermarket, to every encounter you have in the street, to a restaurant, it's 1 in 1,000 that you'll meet in Britain. The quality of service, the politeness, the pride people take in their environment and their homeland. And God bless this great state. And what a pleasure it is to see this part of America instead of, flying into New York and doing that. I haven't been to New York in years, but I remember not liking it then. So I can't imagine what it's like now.
Just wait till Mondani becomes mayor, and it'll be wonderful.
I can't wait till Mondani.
A communist Islamic Mecca.
Yeah!
This has been another episode of WTF.
Or Nukem from Space, as we like to call it.